I've got 4 minutes, that's
+1.
and +1, and I noticed that behind that benign countenance there's a very strict chair. So I'll try and dive straight into this. First, let me compliment Shastri for the book. He's given it a very light touch. He's tried to cover the entire gamut of China and Chineseness in it, something that most people are not able to do. But he has, I think, covered himself by describing it as binary, in other words, shades of grey, shall I say, that there is nothing black, nothing white, there's a lot of grey ground in between, and that way I think you protected yourself from what Professor Arshi Khan said as being labelled as either anti or pro. But there is, what I do notice, is a very strong thread of optimism running through your book. I don't know whether one should call it optimism or hope that India-China relations improve and we actually become friends in the future. To my mind, that can happen, provided something major changes in China. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And let me just touch on a few points that you made in your book, where I felt that being in China, perhaps you are not able to access the information that was available here and that was in the domain. The first was when you spoke about the dictatorship in China, dictatorship of the Chinese Communist Party. No arguments there, I think it's absolutely spot on. But then you try and distinguish that from other dictatorships. I think thereby glossing over the fact that the impact on the people of a dictatorship, whether it's a Chinese Communist Party dictatorship or something of another kind, is the same. And as far as China is concerned, you did say that people were free to move around, people were free to travel, education was free. I think you slipped up on that a little bit, forgetting the hukou system, which was extremely restrictive and controlled where people traveled. In fact, from one neighborhood to the other, that is how it was. Then it got relaxed from a village to another village. Education, similarly, you couldn't pick your college unless you appeared for the Cao exams. The colleges were allotted to you. Whether you could go in for higher education or not was also dictated to you. The other things I would say is that when we are looking at the China-India relationship, I've heard a lot of people talk about us relying on Western scholarship, etc. I think that's changing. For the discerning few, they will find that there are people here who are looking at it. The government itself, I know, does get different kinds of perspectives. Ultimately, of course, the call has to be taken by the political leadership. But to my mind, what we have consistently misread, or shall I rephrase that, misread from the beginning, has been China's ambitions and China's aspirations. China's ambition to be number one. And I think that in our minds, or the minds of our leaders, we thought we could coexist. We thought we could share space. And that was said quite recently by our leaders too. I don't think that is a Chinese perception. The Chinese perception is that they are going to be number one, the rest are going to follow or be subordinate to them. The same is applicable to this region itself, the Indo-Pacific, something the Chinese don't like. And after Xi Jinping came, there has been a change. Not because Xi Jinping himself is a particularly aggressive person, maybe he is, but China had become stronger. And as China became stronger, its foreign policy orientation and aggressiveness altered. It became more aggressive after joining the WTO as its wealth increased. It began using economy and trade as a tool to perpetuate its strategic reach. And it began reclaiming territories that it claimed were theirs hundreds of years ago. And that is what began happening with us. I think as far as India and China is concerned, we have to look at it from a slightly different perspective. There is, I know, a major contestation going on between China and the United States. That is something which will have ramifications for everyone. But we should be concerned with what's happening with us, I think the China-India angle. And here let me cite three things, which I would flag as warning signals that have come. The first was the intrusion in April 2013, days before Li Keqiang, the then Premier, was to come here on his first visit as a Premier. The quality of that intrusion was different. And later it transpired, of course many people here didn't understand it. Many people, of course, there was a reference I think by you to audio-visual media today. Yes. All kinds of people appear there. And they said it was an action by...
You are saying all kinds of people appear, not me.
Not you. By one-off action by some local commander, no, that doesn't happen in China. It cannot happen in China. And later on it came to light that it was the PLA which had planned it. It was discussed in the Politburo, who also discussed whether Li Keqiang's visit would be cancelled by India or not. And then their conclusion was India would not do it for fear of offending China. That is one. The second is during Xi Jinping's visit. The incursion started days before he arrived, continued throughout his visit, lingered on even after. Now that's not a friendly gesture, whatever we may say. Our Prime Minister, of course, did try and reach out to China repeatedly because he felt that it was better to try and have a good relationship with them, but anyway, that didn't work out. Then we come to Doklam, where again, it was 73 days of standoff. I'm just flagging the high points. And there, the indication of Chinese attitude was the Chinese propaganda machinery going into full swing and spewing vitriol with a threat every day. I think those are things that we cannot ignore. And then, of course, finally, their strategic miscalculation, and I repeat that, strategic miscalculation by doing what they did in April 22 with us. They have, at a time when they're trying to compete with the United States and overtake them, they have annoyed their largest neighbor, largest continental neighbor, that's us. And not only that, in the process, they've destroyed whatever trust existed. So I think I don't share that optimism. I hope always that there is, but I don't think that's going to happen until probably the Chinese Communist Party disintegrates, which also is not likely to happen in a short while. But before I conclude, let me make just one point, touching on a chapter of yours. You spoke about the media. You also spoke about the narrative. The narrative is extremely important to the Chinese Communist Party, and they keep molding it or fabricating it. And here let me just conclude with one point. For a number of years, those of us who followed China have always heard the Chinese leadership or Chinese literature talk about them being a 3,000-year-old civilization. Until Jiang Zemin, who was then the Chinese president, went to Egypt and found that the Egyptian president was talking about a 5,000-year civilization. He came back, told his people to have a look again, and after that it became a 5,000-year civilization. You can check this. Safra House has all the people's names. But now Xi Jinping has gone a step further and he has asked his anthropologists to check out and confirm that China is the place where the first man arrived. So I'll end with that, but I'll just say the narrative should not be underestimated.